Welcome everybody to week 4. We will be covering chapter 4, stress, the biopsychosocial factors and illness. So this is your podcast overview of what to expect for the week. As usual, I put your to-do list for the week here just to keep you on track and sort of as a brain check so that you're not forgetting anything. What I would recommend doing is checking out the objectives first thing, listening to the podcast overview that I give of the objectives. We have chapter 4 this week, and we also have 2 modules, the immune system and the cardiovascular system. So in this podcast here, I will explain what to be on the lookout while you're covering this material, some key things to be focusing in on. And of course, it's always helpful to have the PowerPoint slides handy as you're going through and reading the chapter. You can print these out. They have spaces next to each slide that you can take notes. It's helpful to have that. That's what you would be doing in class, in an in-person class. So have those next to you, and as you're reading through the chapter, you can jot down notes and you can kind of see what I've chosen to focus on in the Serafino text for the PowerPoint and how that maps onto the reading. Okay, you'll kind of see carve-outs and you'll see sort of special things to focus on. In terms of the readings, you've got the chapter 4 from Serafino, but you've also got the modules. You'll be learning all about the cardiovascular system and the immune system, which again are 2 other systems that are greatly affected by stress. If you need to go back and watch the video from last week, that might be helpful. That was Stress, Portrait of a Killer. It's helpful because chapter 4 and then chapter 3 that you just read last week are both on the different aspects of stress. This week we're getting more into the biopsychosocial nature of stress and how it manifests into illness. And that video is very applicable, lots of great examples, so it might help to just hear it again. Even before you start reading the chapter, it might be helpful. But then you're also going to be reading chapter 4 in the longevity book, which is Happiness and Health, a Cherry Conundrum. So you're going to be taking a look at happiness and how it factors into our overall health. And then you'll be doing the discussion for this week. So let's skip on down here. Your discussion this week deals with whether or not you are cheery. Do you have a cheerful disposition, aka are you happy, or are you a moody worrier? So you're doing the assessment that goes along with the chapter, which is going to ask you some questions again to talk about what kind of disposition you have. Are you more neurotic? Do you go towards that end of the big 5 spectrum, or are you more of a laid back kind of I don't worry about anything sort of person? And you're going to score yourself. You're going to interpret your score according to the directions in the chapter, and then you're going to answer the below questions. Okay, so I want you all to remember this week, as you are going through these questions, you are supposed to be using and integrating examples from the longevity book. So talk about the termites by name, whether it's John or Patricia, whoever it is. Use examples to illustrate your points. We're looking at how can a cheerful disposition be related to unhealthy behavior. Bet you didn't see that coming. And so why is that? Give some examples. And if there's anything from the main chapter of Serafino and Smith that relates here, go ahead and use that. Let it inform your answers. You're going to be explaining what is neuroticism and how is it related to longevity? What did we see about neuroticism in the termites? How did they fare overall? And how can worrying, to a degree, be helpful to one's health? What kinds of evidence was given in the longevity study that tells us that some degree of worrying is actually helpful for us for our long-term health? Okay, so those are your questions for the week. So part 1 is the assessment, and you're interpreting it and telling me a little bit about what it means. And number 2 is your answer to these questions, integrating in the Serafino and Smith chapter, as well as the longevity chapter. I've put the cite as you write instructions here. Again, you should be referencing those, making sure that as you're writing your responses to the discussion, you're citing everything in APA format, that you're always supporting what you're saying with citations. Those in-text citations are so important. And in doing so, you don't need to provide a works cited as long as you are citing either Serafino and Smith or Friedman and Martin from the Longevity Project, okay? But you need to be citing properly. You should not be using direct quotes. That is just kind of a lazy way of tying in the material. You really should be interpreting things on your own and explaining in your own words what you think things mean, okay? The best way to do that is by taking notes. If you take notes while you're reading and then you rely on your notes, you're less likely to plagiarize and you're more likely to get a better understanding of what it is you're covering. So please make reference to the cite as you write instructions. Those will be helpful. Then lastly, you have your first exam this week. It will cover chapters 1, 3, and 4, and then the modules from chapter 2 that are 1, 2, 5, and 6. So the nervous system, the endocrine system, cardiovascular system, and the immune system. Okay, and that's all. You can go back into the weeks and review those. You're going to have 50 minutes to complete the exam. It's 50 questions. It's closed notes, closed book. If you are trying to use your notes in your book, you're going to run into trouble because you're going to run out of time. Okay, obviously I can't monitor this, but if you do that, it's going to take you longer. You're going to run into some trouble. Make sure that you have reliable Wi-Fi when you're sitting down to take your exam, so it doesn't kick you out. Always have a backup option, okay? So that's your exam. For studying for that exam, I just want to remind you, go back and use the objectives for each chapter. These are great to use to study with. You should be able to answer each of these questions without looking at your notes. And if you can't, I would highlight the ones you're having trouble with, and those would be the things I would study. As you can see, these questions are multifaceted, some of them. So in order to answer one, it might be a model where it has different phases or steps. It might be theories, might be stages of things. Most of these questions are not simple definition questions, so you really want to have a good understanding. And so these are a great place to go to make sure you have like a study guide to use for the test. Okay, that's it for this week. Please let me know if you have any questions, if you need clarification on topics or further illustration, just sometimes more clarification on things can help, and I'd be happy to do that.